We got to break ourselves out of our own pattern. So when you get to that point where you're like, I don't know if I should go forward, you need to keep going. Because that line that we're saying that we don't know where it is, that line is at the breaking point.
So if someone's experiencing some kind of fear, some kind of thing that is holding them back from actually moving forward, what would you say to that person and how do they move through that specifically?
It's the whole starting point to solving a problem. It's that first step. You get stuck sometimes in a rut and you don't realize you're in the wrong direction. I was driving home. I ended up getting into a T-bone accident, and that kind of triggered this whole rethinking of I'm stuck in this wrong space. And maybe this was a big punch that kind of helped redirect me. So how do I get over fear? Well, fear comes from challenge yourself all the time, but it also comes from learning. So these little changes create wins, and then the fear starts to drop.
How have you worked through some of the challenges that you're experiencing?
Sometimes you can't just create your own turning points because you need some sort of...
Welcome to The Edge of Possible, the podcast dedicated to helping you achieve extraordinary things. I'm your host, Cameron Atlas, and together, let's unlock your edge. How do you solve an impossible problem? For most of us, when we hit this kind of barrier, we see a giant wall and really struggle to make our way over that. But what if you could train your brain to see everything as a puzzle that's just waiting to be solved? What if you could reframe every barrier to be just a millimeter high, something that with the right approach, you could easily step over? That's exactly what we're exploring on today's show with my guest, Jeffery Potvin, or JP for short. JP is the CEO of the AI infrastructure company Arc Compute and an investor in over 100 companies with more than 10 successful exits. He's a master problem solver who, since he was a kid, has seen the world very differently than most, as I found out in our conversation. You're not only going to hear his incredible story about how the literal car crash forced him to reset his entire life, but we're also going to break down his exact framework for solving any problem. We'll also talk about how to overcome fear by starting small, why your breaking point can actually be an extraordinary asset, and how every roadblock is an opportunity to rethink and recalibrate your approach. That's coming right up here on The Edge of Possible. JP, welcome to the show, my man.
Cameron, it's always amazing to see you and get the opportunity to chat with you. So I'm excited for today.
Yeah, I'm excited too. You've invested in a bunch of companies. I think it's over 100 now, had more than 10 exits, successful exits. And I think you're CEO of one of your portfolio companies now as well. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, we had a bit of a shift about a year ago. And we just finished our year end, so it's been quite the story for the last 10 to 12 months. So it's kind of exciting, but yeah, it's good. Yep, took over, nice. And you know what? It's been an amazing build up, and restructure and everything. So I can tell you that I just got off the call with one of our investors and also a friend and colleague, and it was a good conversation. And those are the conversations you kind of look forward to having after you've gone through a whirlwind. And yeah, it makes things seem a little bit less edgy and stressful. So it's good.
Nice. Well, I guess with the sheer amount of opportunities that you've been presented with, that you've developed, that you've built out, that you've been a part of, and then problems that you're helping to solve in the world, what would be your number one suggestion for how someone should tackle a problem? Because it can be challenging to tackle problems, especially if they're problems that are big problems and challenges, and whether that's business-wise or even in our own personal lives. And so I think the better we become at problem solving, the better off our lives and our companies are going to be, right? So what's that first step that somebody can take? This one thing from today would make the biggest difference.
You know, I think it's a great question, because if you kind of dive into the different layers of it, it kind of has to go back a bit more from just what can I do to solve a problem. And I think it goes back to, for me, is I challenge myself on everything I do, and hopefully everybody does every day. And the challenge could be, walking 10 kilometers a day to reading a book or whatever it might be, right? And I think is that when you get into the routine of challenging yourself on a few things, then when it comes to solving problems, it's just a different view of the world and how you challenge yourself to look at the world. And I've always looked at everything as broken, because I'm very processed. So to me, everybody, I guess change is a tough thing. And it's hard for people to understand, hey, I can do this better or more efficiently. And my brain looks at it and says, this is completely inefficient and we're wasting our time. So everyone want to move faster. So the whole point of moving faster is that I can move faster without creating myself more work. So when I look at problems, it's a great synergy of when I was teaching courses and I would teach with people that were first year versus fourth year university or college. The first year students would come in and say, I'm going to build a project that's going to fix restaurants. And you'd say, okay, I didn't know they were broken, but all right. And they would explain why. And it was always about speed. I couldn't get this fast enough. It didn't work we could do it this way. And then when you get into a fourth year student who has gone through everything in school, living, learning, they've had more challenges around them in life. And now they're looking at these problems completely different. And they don't want to fix how they're eating. They're trying to fix how education works, how things have been connecting with their landlords, how they have to pay these bills, because their experiences have changed. So I think the way we have to structure things is that we can look at everything as being broken. And everything doesn't fit in how we want to see something. And everything can then, if it's mapped out that way, and if I keep challenging everything, and I don't let the people take the challenge out of me, and I keep asking questions, why this? Why does it do this? How come nuclear fusion works this way, not this way? Why not this? Then you will challenge yourself to learn more about it. You'll actually start to read books, and you'll want to figure out, why does aviation work this way, and it doesn't have this component? And the more experiences you gain, the more knowledge you have of, call it being dangerous, but that allows you to then challenge even more, because then you can really understand, well, physics doesn't make sense here and why you're using this. And then when you are talking with someone, they're trying to explain to you how efficient and how great something is, you're actually in the background thinking, nope, no, that isn't really working for me, because if you take this type of fluid and you mix it with this should be the outcome. You have this viscosity inside of and all of a sudden you're just rambling through things, and which means you're troubleshooting. So now you're actually trying to improve a situation because you have the knowledge, which means you've challenged yourself to actually diversify your learning and ask more questions, dive into more things. So if someone came to me and said, I think there's a problem with X, while they're saying it, my brain is already going through 4 million billion pieces of data points trying to figure out, this actually is a problem and this is a solution. Try this. Let's start off with that. So that comes from experience, reading, learning, doing things you never thought you would do, get on a plane, jump out of a plane, whatever it is. All of those experiences, I feel, going to layer into how you can solve a problem or how you can look at life differently and challenge it. So if you keep going, now you start pushing forward to the comment you made about how can I discern what a problem is that everything is a problem. When we're talking here, your specialty is working as a podcaster on this segment. As you start to work through things, you're going to say, this software doesn't make any sense. I can't do this, this, or this. So then you start trying to solve that problem because you're solving your own immediate problems and you don't think that that's a global problem. Whereas somebody who's running 10 to 20 podcasts starts to find out where those disefficiencies are and then starts to, I'm going to build a product that does X. And then all of a sudden they start building out Riverside, and now Riverside becomes a platform that gets used globally. So it's more of how fast you can challenge yourself on everything, ask questions, ask yourself questions, and then action it. And action is the hardest thing to solving a problem. It isn't the problem.
Yeah.
It's the action you take to make that first step forward.
Two things with that. Have you always been a troubleshooter? And then let's talk on the action side as well as to what holds people back maybe from actually doing the things that are required. Have you always thought in that way? Have you always been, like, right from a child, somebody that has looked at problems, or was there a certain moment that happened? Like, how did you come to think in that specific way?
I didn't know I did this until maybe a few years ago. My parents shared it. I believed I was, but I was always a builder. So my parents would say they told me these stories, right? They'd come into my room and I'd readjust my entire room. I'd put my dresser in the closet. My parents would be like, why is your dress in the closet? It's in my way. I can't see. And the parents are like, it's a dresser. And I'm like, but look how more efficient it is being in the closet. I open the door, so my stuff is tucked away. I have all this open space. And they would take it out, put it back in the room. So those types of things, right? I needed a safe. What 5-year-old kid needs a safe? I went downstairs and I built a safe. So I made it out of wood, put a big chain around it, and that became my safe because I was protective of my I guess coins or whatever I had at the time. How much stuff could I have? So I always was looking at ways to fix things. I built my own rollerblades, like a lot of stuff, right? I just looked at things differently. I just thought, this isn't for me, this mainstream stuff. How can I shift it, change it? How can I make it more suited for me? At the time, my parents or me didn't know what this was. They just thought I was a messed up, weird kid that just built his own stuff or wrecked everything. So like, I think in a way, sometimes it's innate in your ability to do grow and build that way. Numbers to me were fun and easy. So to me, I just looked at everything a little different. And I guess when you come to this challenging side, it's always been there. It doesn't seem like a challenge to me. It just seems like, this doesn't work. Why can't we do something better about this? How can we work around this to get to a faster outcome? And then you try to build those provisions in, which I think in time, and there's a great book, I think it's called Switch by the Heath brothers. And the whole thing is, it's all about change and how scared we are of change. And we're afraid of change, even if it's a little bit, because in our brain, we've processed how to go from A to B the fastest. And when we figured that's the best way, nobody can change that. Like, I don't want to change that. But when you really look at the surface, it just became convenient to you as a person. You didn't look at how the convenience was to people. So I'm sure you've seen those diagrams where they built sidewalks and the people have cut the corner and they've walked on the grass and it's all worn out and no one uses the sidewalk because everybody's going to cut corners. Well, that was because they tried to make it look angular and make it look all nice. And everybody else is like, why am I following this? This is a terrible setup. I'm just going to cut through the grass here to get where I'm going faster. So we don't take into the perspective of what the audience wants. We do what we think is best for our look and for everything else. So it's how do we challenge ourselves to be more dynamic and move with the flow of everything else and challenge status quo all the time. Ask the questions and figure out, how can I change this? I'm not here to uproot you and cause you a pain, but what I am here to do is to help enable you to be able to operate a little bit easier, a little bit smoother, so that you can do more of the other things that you're more challenged with, and that makes it more fun of a day, I guess.
Were there emotions back then when you were a kid then, when it came to, because I think fear, like when you mentioned about fear, right? Of what holds a lot of people back from taking action are the self-limiting patterns of behavior that are playing out, right? I mean, it sounds like going back to 5 years of age and building a safe, getting the chain around it, putting the dresser in the closet, like you were taking action like immediately. So was it just that? Like, did emotions just not creep in? Was there any limits that you maybe put on yourself and they just didn't come into your sphere, I guess, in terms of your, perception?
I'm going to say that there's probably a limited amount of emotion tied to it, because I probably didn't understand emotions much at that time, or maybe even today. I'm not I try to be more cognizant of it and learn through it, which means that I'm more protective of the things I say so I don't hurt others' feelings, because I am very direct, because I see things differently. So you're allowed to, and I guess you just have to adapt to others. But I think as a kid, another one that pops in my head is that my mother shared a story that when I was done playing with my toys in the sandbox at whatever, 5, 6, 7 years old, I picked them all up, went down to the beach and sold them. So I guess my brain was like, I've matured past these. I don't need them anymore. So I'm going to go sell them. So
that's so good. Did you get a good price? Did you sell
honestly, I don't recall the amount I got for them. Yeah. But I think it's the idea is that I learned as a youth that I had this drive to just solve the problem and move on, and not carry the guilt of the change or the fear of going to make the change, because to me, the process was inefficient, or I needed to make it better, or I just went along with it. I used to run a lot of large projects way back in the day with Roadblocks when I worked there. And I would run projects with, say, 500 people on a team to roll out something. And then we would go for 8 months, a year, 2 years on a project. And then one day the project canceled, like this. And someone's like, oh my God, we spent so much time. How do you manage this? How are you not upset? And I said, all I needed was a yes or a no. And we worked our ass off to get to the yes or the no. And it was a no. So we move on. We've got 12 other projects to work on. So it wasn't an emotional barrier for me that we did exceptional work. Everybody stepped up and built this amazing product or platform or direction. It's the fact that when they made the decision, that's all we needed as the gratification. Our win was a yes or no. And that's, I guess, in a way, how I kind of treat things is that, if 90% of projects fail in corporations because they can't get to the endpoint, our goal is to get to an endpoint, which means that if I'm going to start something, I personally want to make sure I'm in the top 8% of getting this project done because I've put effort, time, money, whatever it is I've put into that. I want to accomplish it. That's why I set out to do it. And if there's a point where I know it's not going to work, I'm going to go sell my toys, which means that I know that I have to step off that ship and go forward because it's wasting everyone's time, including mine. And someone else has to jump in and say that. So there are people you're surrounding yourself with that will help and be enablers. And sometimes you got to step over some of those thoughts because they will tell you it's not right, it's not working. And that's where the passion, that's where the drive, that's where the forward thinking is, that you're doing the right thing. And you have to sometimes say, you know what? This isn't working for me. What you guys are telling me that I should stop this project. I'm going to keep it going forward. And maybe we can regroup in 6 months when I think I'm further ahead, because right now it's working. And there's sometimes you have to push a little harder than they're pushing you to stop.
So there's a few things in here that I think it'd be really good to unpack here. First is, how does someone go who maybe you mentioned about from an emotion standpoint, right? What I love about your way of thinking is there's the outcome I'm aiming for. Here's something that's getting in my way. I'm going to get that out of the way so I can get to where I want to go, right? And at the end of the day, that's like, I joke about this with clients when I'm coaching them. I go, at the end of the day, all that we're doing here is here's where you want to go, here's where we are, and here's the road to get here, and we just need to make it a little less windy. And if we can get you there faster, more effectively, in a way that allows you to feel better, grow more, save time, make money, whatever it is, that's a great outcome. Right. And it seems so simple, right? It seems so simple. How does someone go who may have the fear there or is a little more, afraid to take that lead? Like how do they think a little more like JP in this case, where they can, in a way, feel the fear and do it anyway?
For sure. A story that pops in my mind is being that I'm sharing stories and being as freshly open as I can, out of character, I guess, because I'm enjoying, obviously, like doing this. So I think the story that pops in my mind is I left a meeting one day, and at the time my boss turned to me and he said, what did you think of that meeting? How do you think it executed? Did it go to what you thought it was going to? And I said, no, the meeting went well, but there were some things that didn't go the way I expected. And, I'm going to approach it this way. And he said, well, actually, the way you should approach it is you need to figure out how to work around those people or that position. And you need to forward think that and think of what is that. And I said, he's like, you have to be a politician. And I said, I don't want to be a politician. And I was always told, you're a bull in a china shop. And that was because if I've analyzed the hell out of this, there's nowhere but straight through, because it doesn't make any sense to go around because it's wasting time. And that was my learning point, which was the aha moment, was where I thought about it. And he's like, you need to be the best damn politician than anybody else. I don't care if you don't want to be one. You need to be the best. And that was that turning point for me, where I started to look at things slightly different now. So now I looked at them as, I don't need to be a bull in a china shop, because I know I can get what I want. And a bull in a china shop just means I keep going through, I accommodate everybody and keep going. But the accommodations are really small bumpers. Like, it's just, I don't have time. We're going this way and we'll get it done. Oh, you're not going to go. I'll go around to get to this way. And eventually I'll get there and you'll accept it and be like, fine, it was a great idea, but I'm angry because you didn't buy me in. And that's what I learned at that moment in the elevator, was that there are a lot of people that have built their careers on different aspects of business projects and everything else. And what I needed to be better at was focusing on the other people and the other emotions and the other people that are tied into this process that I'm intended to break or change. So I started to learn more about, how do I take a person aside and share information with them, coach them through this change that's going to happen in 3 months. It's inevitable. They don't know it, but I'm going to work with them and build them up to it. Or I'm going to make it their idea and let them come to the team and say, hey, I got this great idea. I want to pitch this. And what I found is that when you get more buy-in from more people, you end up actually building a stronger team to support you in the drive of what you're going. And every person has a different element of how they understand something. So, just like people that work in a business, they have different interests. Some people want to make a lot of money. Some people want community. Some people want challenges. Everybody has a different need in a business. It's the same thing when you're working to build your project or execute. There's different needs. So it's understanding what those needs are, and hopefully you can keep them confined into your project, that you don't have to do a lot of crazy things, but you're able to move in the same direction. And instead of being a squiggly line to get to your endpoint, you're actually, as you're going, you're picking up more and more people that are on your tribe, and they're building with you. So by the time you get to that endpoint that you were so driven to get to, you didn't get there with your team, you got there with the whole company. And that comes from working with everybody. And it might seem like it takes a long time, but if you show your plan of what you're trying to get to, and people can see that, and they can also throw their ideas in it, and they can help structure it, you will get there actually faster than you were when you were trying to be that bull in a china shop. So I've started to pick up on those things, and that's where it kind of helped me change my approach. So instead of going and, as the example back to the selling my toys, it was going to my folks and saying, here's what I'm thinking of doing. What did you pay for these? So now I've got some more information. Can you bring me down? Maybe I could use your help while I'm selling these toys. So now you're tying in other entities that are going to help you bring more value. So the end point was that maybe I sold them all for $5, but if I would have tied them into the process, maybe I would have got $50, because I took that learning and education along the way and while I got there. So I bought in more people into the program. So I think that's kind of where my head changed that day in the elevator. And just for kudos shakes, is the CEO was my boss is now the CEO of Lululemon. So over the last few years, so it's pretty exciting that you can recall some of these cool moments that helped you kind of shift how you see something.
It is really cool how you do over the course, especially once you're in an industry or industries for over the course of decades, that the relationships that something way back then can have an impact now. And then also, I think it's really cool seeing other people's trajectories as well. I know we've known each other for a decent amount of time now, and so being able to see the other person and celebrate their successes in that way as well, of like seeing where they're going, why they're going there, and that's a really, really cool thing in itself, of just, again, the power of relationships, right? And so coming back to the person who's trying to solve a challenge, they're experiencing some fear, they're experiencing some emotion. If they're in a team, having conversations with other people, continue to keep that end in mind there as well as they're going forward. How do they then take on a bit of, the analogy you meant, like the bull in the china shop, where, you know what, sometimes all right, an action has to actually be taken here. So if someone's experiencing some kind of fear, some kind of thing that is holding them back from actually moving forward, actually taking those steps forward, what would you say to that person, and how do they move through that specifically? Because it sounds like you've really got that part. It seems like yours is on the other side of that, of ensuring that you're then taking in other people into consideration and building those people components to it, which is all on both sides is important. So what is your thinking when it comes to that?
It's a really good question, because it's the whole starting point to solving a problem. It's that first step. And I think everybody's going to be always a little bit different on how they action something. But, you could take anything from a personal goal, like, oh, I'm going to go to the gym and lose weight, or I'm going to make and save this much money, or I'm going to whatever that might be, right? As you're kind of working through this process, we kind of talked about this earlier. If I say that I'm going to go raise, or I'm going to go and build $100 million company, is that in 1 week, 10 years? A lifetime? Like, where does that fit into this trajectory of where you're going? And then when you think about it, you have to start to put commonalities to it. So if I have $100 in my bank account and I've never made more than $50,000, how am I going to build $100 million company? Like, some things aren't equating right now. So the math isn't working. So I need to figure out, okay, well, maybe I can improve my own self-positioning first and take that as a challenge. So my fear is that I can't work two jobs. I'm not allowed. Well, maybe I can try doing something else I'm good at, and then maybe I can make some dollars here. Now I start to find confidence builders, things that are going to really start being enablers. And I think the key is that you have to find enablers. And then that's the same thing as when you start a business. You're going to find people that enable you around you, right? Like they're going to help you. And some people will be naysayers. And guess what? You need naysayers. You need people that will tell you you're dumb and this isn't working. Why? Because it's challenging you. You need to figure out now, oh, that person says this. Write it down. Now, when I'm going through and someone tells you, oh, that's so great. You're awesome. Okay, great. It's a cheerleader, but what am I getting from that great? What did they tell me was great about this? And then they may share a few points. Well, now you can write that down. And then what you're doing is you're collecting inputs that are validating your direction or validating a direction. And the more experience you get, the more things you try, the harder you try at something, you start to kind of figure out what can I actually keep doing and what can I do? Where am I hitting roadblocks? Where am I finding things I got to work around? Where do I got to tie people into this process? So how do I get over fear? Well, fear comes from challenging yourself all the time, but it also comes from learning. I'm going to hit a roadblock and then I got to sit back and think, was that roadblock because they're bothered by me? Is the roadblock because there's no way over this wall and this is just the process? Or am I looking at this problem the wrong way? So you then have to kind of recalibrate, keep recalibrating. But to get over that fear, just to start, find something small, something that you can bite your teeth in that's easier to accomplish than setting this super lofty goal. And then just say that I need to save $10,000 in the next year. And then you can start to work your way back. So pick your endpoint and then work your way back. And then your starting point is, I'm not going to buy that coffee tomorrow morning. There, you just save $5, or when maybe in Canada, that's $100 coffee. So you just saved yourself $100 and then boom, you saved $100. So that's the starting point. Now you've started it, right? So then if every morning and I write down on my spreadsheet and I realize, holy geez, if I don't drink that $100 coffee every day, I will have $3,000 at the end of the month. Wow. That's pretty close to my $10,000 goal. So it's a small little change, right? So these little change create win, which gets a dopamine, gets your brain going. And then the fear starts to drop. You become inevitable. Like you just feel like I am driven. I'm going to make this work because I found the loophole. As a kid, I would analyze how banks worked. And I found the loopholes. I found that they had this free service that you could have an overdraft on your account. So the overdraft was $2,000 on an account that was a checking account. So who wouldn't in their right mind that gets charged $0 can go take out $2,000 and now have an overdrawn account that costs you nothing? So you use that, go buy newspapers and sell them. So I made money off the banks because the banks opened up that door. Now, obviously that door doesn't exist, but there's always ways to find opportunities. The longer you pay attention to them, the longer you dive into things, you can start to pinpoint where those opportunities are, and how you get over those fears is just doing it. And if you fail, awesome. You tried.
Yeah. There's one belief in there. There's always a way to find opportunities. I think that just that having that as an underlying core belief is a really powerful belief to have, right? Because if you're seeing it that way, there's always a way. There's always a way to find opportunities. There's always a way. That always is opening your mind up, opening your brain up to finding where that exists, right? Versus asking yourself, am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to be able to find a way to do this? And so that's really powerful. The other is around enablers. I think is really, really important, and starting small, because it does start small. I'm a massive believer in having things around me and it's the same with my clients, but I highly recommend them. Have things around you that support your success, like visual cues, right? So I have my mission, the values that I have, the different belief systems, they're all where I can see them every single day. With that, when it comes to affirmations, if there's an affirmation that somebody has and you say that out loud and deep down underneath the surface, you call bullshit on yourself because it's so far removed. I don't care how much you tell yourself that you're going to make $1 billion or $1 million or that you're going to be this person or that person. If there isn't some form of, I can take a step towards this and achieve this, then it's going to work completely against you in that way, because unconsciously you're going to be saying, I don't believe this. And so the enablers, I think, are really important. And I have an example of this that, as you were sharing, when I started learning the guitar, so piano has been many, many years. And one of the problems that I was aiming to solve when it came to the keynotes is the reality was when giving talks with live music on stage was that there's certain places that just can't get a piano. Either they don't have the budget for it, they don't have the space for it, or they just can't get a piano. There's not a piano like where they are. And so I was, as a result, missing out on certain opportunities a number of years ago. And during COVID, it was August, mid-August, and I decided that I'd start learning the guitar. And I decided, right, if I could just do an hour a day, that would be outstanding, because I'd tried and picked up the guitar before and my fingers would start hurting and I'd whimper back to the piano, right? And so I started with an hour a day while I was also doing an hour piano, hour of vocal training. Okay, I got to a point because one of my values was being met of impact of, okay, if I learned how to do this, it would enable me to make a greater impact with the talks I was delivering. So I started with an hour a day. And then I ended up being able to string enough chords together where I wrote a song on the guitar. And I sat back afterwards. I thought, I don't think I would have written this on the piano. It just had a different vibe to it, different feel to it. And I had this massive light bulb moment of, oh, there's this whole realm of creativity that has just been sitting there. It's always been there. I've just now got the skill sets to tap into it a little bit. And so there was the enabling that occurred from simply doing 1 hour a day. And all of a sudden there were two of my top values of impact and then creativity as well being met. And so then I was doing, all right, now I'm doing a couple of hours a day, right? Then I had this experience. I was in Nashville at the time living, and I got a little unwell. Went and got tested for COVID. So I drive through this place, when they had the drive-through testing stations and all that. And so I drive it through, and the first guy, there's all these cars lined up, and I drive past the first car, and in true Nashville fashion, the first guy that I drive past is sitting in his seat, laid, sitting back on his acoustic guitar playing away, right? On his acoustic guitar playing away. And I think, man, I could have brought mine. I could have brought mine, and I didn't even think about it because I'd always been tied to a specific geographical location with the piano, right? And all of a sudden, this third piece was, oh, I can now take the thing that I love the most to the places that I love the most, and now freedom was getting met as well. So there's these three core values of mine that were getting met, and it became obsessive, right? But it didn't start that way. Over the course, and the reason I share this story is, one, those pieces there, but then when I wrote it down. You mentioned about like a spreadsheet and being able to see, okay, if I could save this amount of money, I tracked every single thing. It was on a daily basis. How much time did I do? And I mapped it out to a 500-day period. And I worked out that if I could increase my number of hours now up to, and some of those days had to be like 7, 8, 9 hours, I could equate that overall over the 500-day period to 2,000 hours, which would be an average of 4 hours a day, every day for 500 days average. And I thought, all right, this is now game on, right? And it became a challenge. It became a game that I play with myself. And I was back in Australia when I did the 2,000th hour. It was on the 500th day, and I went and took the guitar. No one else was home. It was on the farm that I grew up on as a kid. And I went up to the chimney top and sat on the chimney top and played the guitar for my 2,000th hour while there's a storm going off in the distance. And it was for nobody else other than myself, because I found a way to be able to continue to execute. And it's everything that you were sharing about, everything that you were talking about. You find an enabler. I see them as like what I call reference points. Like you have a reference point for how something worked, and then it builds upon it. You build. But so many people will have reference points for how they're not doing something well. Then the fear comes up, the lack of belief comes up, the limiting patterns come up. And if you build those enablers, as you were calling them, and you build them and stack them on top of each other over and over and over again, or reference points, you build them on top of each other until a point where it becomes so ingrained in the momentum that you're building and the way in which you're acting and executing on, that the other stuff just falls away, or at the very least, it becomes imbalanced in your favor.
I love the story, and I remember, of course, you sharing this story on your journey over the years of when you challenged yourself to learn the guitar. I got to see you play the piano side too, which is cool. But on the guitar side, and when you were challenging yourself, I think what the spreadsheet does as well it enables you by seeing the accomplishment, and then the 2000 hours was the gratification of your efforts. So there's a reward at the end, and the reward was you chose to find a reward with that was sitting on the chimney and experiencing this open view and all those things. That's what your reward is. Or it was like I hit 2000. But the point of it all it is that you used little pieces of wins to keep you invigorated, and that's because you could envision the end point. If you looked at it as, when you first started off, you said the first thing you stated was, I don't want to run the guitar because it hurts my fingers and I'm getting tired and all those things. But then that was a small part of the win, because then you looked at the win side, and the win column was, I'll be able to play anywhere. I'll be able to play with other people. I'll be able to carry this around with me. And now I can make more dollars, make more value, bring more smiles to people. Wow. The offset is so more powerful than the first little negative that you came up with. And I think that in my experience, and interesting enough, I had this conversation today in a review. It was the fact that I create the wall first before I look at how I get over the wall, which means you created your own barrier before you even got in the race. So most people's fear is by putting up the barriers and then figuring out how they're going to get over them, which means I'll never get over them because the fear is going to be too high because I've already created all the things I can't do. So imagine being a high jumper, and the first thing I do is I stick the high jump at 8 feet, and I'm like, oh, I could never do that. Well, why did you put the thing at 8 feet? If you started practicing at 3 feet, you would have got over it. But your mind said, I better go to the highest. I'm like, well, you're never going to get 8 feet. You got to work your way up to it. So the whole thing is like, how do I create a barrier, low barrier to entry, so that I can improve on it? And every time I improve on it, I'm going to realize that, man, I'm good at this, or, hey, I'm successful. And it kind of goes back to this story. This was, and I'm sure we've seen these all over the internet or Instagram or something. The story was like, and maybe it was a mistake, and the person was told that they were a math genius. And the kid believed, wow, really? I'm terrible at school and everything else, but I'm a math genius. And years later, the kid just started crushing it everywhere in math. And then years later, they got the test back and they said they screwed up and the kid failed bad. But the kid ended up becoming a math genius. And you're like, how is this even possible? Well, because the barriers were created by everybody else and including the person. And if you can avoid the barriers and look at things just slightly different, and one thing I'll ask someone, just as I'm rambling through this story of getting a mindset change, or how we have to mindset change, is, I ask people, do you like winter? And people will be like, well, I'll ask you, do you like winter?
I'm not much of a fan.
Fair. And I can ask you many questions. Why don't you like winter? And you'll say, it's slushy, it's snow is terrible, and it slows everybody down. I can't get anywhere. The driving's terrible. And I will preface it by saying, well, let's change that, just a slight change. What do you like about winter? What's the one thing that you can put your mind to and say, I love this? What's one thing that you love?
The first one that comes to my mind is cuddling up with my wife on a beautiful sofa and just being able to talk in front of a fire and, some deep conversation.
I love it. Amazing. So now when somebody asks you, do you like winter? The first thing you say, the first thing that's going to pop in your mind is you having an emotional moment with your wife and you're enjoying it. So now winter has a purpose. I can't wait to do that because it's winter. So we can't wait for winter. When's winter coming? And your wife's will be like, you're weird. Why do you care winter's coming? Because we get to do this moment. So now you've shifted your mindset around solving the problem by putting that one positive thing. So now everybody that asks you, you'll always use it. So in my case, I just love the white covered snow after a snowfall, or walking when the snowflakes are hitting your face. I just love that because I love walking. So to me, that's perfect. So then I would say that every time you say that. So the first thing that comes out is, I love winter because of this. And then it changes the whole perspective of everything you're doing. Even the conversation will be about something positive because that person won't think of a negative at first. They'll be like, yeah, it's a good point. I do like that too. And now you've avoided the entire negative, putting the wall up, which is going to prevent you from having to either climb over the wall with the person or climb over it in general. So that's just how I look at life, is that as I'm being challenged with things, I want to make sure that I don't care how many barriers in front of me, they're this big. They mean nothing because that barrier is so tiny, but you've made it so big to you that you think you can't get over it. and I'll be over it in 5 minutes. Why? Because I'll figure out a way to get over it and convince you and have you come with me, because the barrier to me, I only see it as a millimeter. To your view, or not yours in general, to everybody, that I have to create these big barriers either to protect myself or to protect the domain. And I want through that. I want over it. I want to figure out what the real reason is. I got a lot of questions and I need to ask them. And if I can't figure it out, I'm going to keep going till I get them. So it's just a different way of shifting. Yes, maybe I was born with it. Somehow the universe dropped it in my head, but regardless, it's just a different way of looking at it. And I think that's how you break down fear, is not have a fear of asking questions and being able to downsize the road in front of you and see the outcome and go after it, and just know that there's barriers everywhere and you're going to hit them hard, but just make them smaller and smaller every time, and you'll find your way around them each time.
The good thing about this conversation is, while, yeah, like you said, some of us are born with it, and there's a methodical nature to this at the same time, right? And if you've got a methodical nature to something, you are able to take those steps and execute on those. And when it comes to that of minimizing the barrier, one thing that I think is really important as well is, even if the barrier is somewhat large, it gets smaller over time as long as you're executing over and over and over again. Like using the example that I was sharing about before, and you were sharing with the guitar, with the fingers hurting, that happened multiple times. I didn't get far enough along in realizing that, there's calluses that build on your end of your fingers and they stop hurting after a while. Like I didn't know that. Right. And so I thought, if this is the way that guitarists feel all the time, I'm like, I'm out, man. But when I realized that was the case, then, it was very different. And I do remember there was this, I actually went on a date with someone a few years ago, and she mentioned how she was learning the guitar. And by the time I'd been through this, it might have been 22 or something like that, 23. She was practicing for about 15 minutes a day, and I could hear it in her voice. She was about to give up. And I said to her, if you could just really focus in on like 30 to 60 minutes a day, the progress that you'd see is completely different to what happens at 15 minutes, right? And it did build over time with those three examples that I shared with the guitar and that journey, is that the reason why I was doing it and the outcome built over time. And so as you're thinking about problems that you're looking to solve, as you're listening to this, when it comes to the problems that you're solving, minimize, as JP's been mentioning, I think it's a fantastic way of going about it. You minimize it by looking at some of the things and looking at what you love about what's going to happen when you do it, when you move through it, when you overcome it. And then realize as well that there are going to be times when you just have to do stuff that you don't feel like doing. I see discipline as doing what's required rather than what you feel like in a certain moment. And the greater sense of purpose that you're able to build, the outcome, and being able to attach yourself to that, if you can just move through that for a period of time, with what you shared earlier, JP, as well, around continuing to assess, right? And being able to see, okay, this is what hasn't worked, and this is the progress that I'm making, then it grows over time, right?
It does. And I love the progress part, because sometimes we don't give ourselves enough gratitude for our efforts. We just kind of let it go by the wayside. And, just like you sitting on the chimney, that's a reward. But, if you use that for everything, if I accomplish this, I get the chimney, or I get to do this, whatever that is. I think that whole process, it's the enabler, right? I would share, like, how do you go to the gym every day? How do you do all these things? Maybe it's, again, you're processed that way, but I'm sure I wasn't figuring that out at 5 or 10, but it became that I had to find what the reward system was for me. Someone would say, how do you travel around the world and not get bored? Well, I love taking street art. So the excitement for me looking for that next street art photo or taking that photo is what excites me, because now I've captured something that nobody else has, or that no one has a lot of, or whatever the reasons are. So you come up with the reasons, but you're going after something. So I can travel through any country and just walk around for hours and days, and I will leave with 1,000 photos. And to someone else, that might mean nothing. But to me, it's 1,000 photos of street art that I will capture that may never be seen again because someone's going to tag or write over that tomorrow or next week and it's gone. And I got something cool. And that to me is what invigorates you. So you have your own reward systems. You just have to buy into them. And you have to figure out what gets the juice flowing, gets you excited. So if the reward is at the end, you just have to get there, which is the first step. So if I know I can go get this, then I'm going to do whatever it takes to get there because it's just the walk that has to push me through. I can let my body do the walking. It's not hard effort to walk. It's not hard effort to move, right? Or go and get the workout and then the win is the shower. All of these things have a win somewhere. Just figure out what the win is and then drive yourself for that win. And I think in your case with the guitar, is the win was to learn. You learn a significant amount about yourself, about the calluses and what you gain and what you worked on. And now you can basically go anywhere and do a great talk and you can play with the best of them. So man, you're multi-talented. You just built out a whole new muscle that no one knew you had and you didn't know you had. And boom, now you're going to be working on, I don't know, the drums. Like it's endless because you can now see that you have the capability as a human to do anything that you set your mind to because you know the win, you've gone through the journey, you can do anything.
The reward structure is something to really drive home here because there is something incredible about rewarding yourself. And it doesn't mean going off and buying something huge or whatever it is, but it is in your mind, continuing to reinforce the learned behavior or the way that you're executing, continuing to reinforce that over and over and over and over and over and over again. Because if you're not, then you're likely going to have to end up relying on external validation in order to know that you're enough. And that's a recipe for disaster when it comes to executing in any kind of productive way when nobody else is around, right? Because there's plenty of times when nobody else is around and your ability to be able to continue executing over and over and over again is your ability to be able to continue reinforcing that you've been able to do that. And it's the same as any specific thing that you're aiming to achieve, right? And so that reward structure, it's not just a specific thing out there that we're going to reward ourselves with, right? It's continuing to reinforce and have that mechanism in place to go over and over again till it becomes, I like to think of it as it's who I am rather than what I do, right? Because then all of a sudden it becomes part of my identity. It becomes part of our identity. And as soon as it becomes part of your identity, right, then it's, oh yeah, this is effortless now. You mentioned about the gym as an example, like going to the gym each day or every couple of days, whatever it is, it becomes effortless because it becomes who it is that I am, right? And so continuing to reinforce that's key. Has there been moments where, like in your life up until now, where things haven't worked out? And how did you manage that? Is it just on to the next thing? Because I mean, let's maybe go back to before angel investing. Like there was maybe some big moments there. I'm sure we all have big moments. So take me back to there and let's explore there a little bit and see what kind of moments were going on there.
For sure. And, I think if you go back to how everything is worked through when I went on my own and started my own company, you don't just fall into success, whatever that means to someone. It's different for everybody, of course. And to me, it's just I'm building forward and you're going to hit roadblocks everywhere. If you really dug into it, nothing's come easy. When you don't think the way everybody else thinks, you hit every roadblock. Nobody wants to buy something because you come at them and tell them that they don't know what they're talking about and this is wrong and do it this way. You're the first person they Heisman out of there because it's the most difficult thing is change, right? So you have to learn the skills to work with people, work into their systems, right? And you can kind of follow what's hot and new and all that stuff from tech and whatever else. But, if you're a techie and you're trying to drive something, it's really the passion that gets you into a space. Like if you're heavy on blockchain, you'll do everything blockchain, nothing else matters, and you'll focus heavy on it and keep going, right? So 10, 20 years in blockchain, now all of a sudden the world's catching up to you and now you've got relevance and value because you've spent all that time pursuing something that nobody else could understand and now it's becoming prevalent. So you might hit a million walls in that time frame, but you're passionate about this is going to change the world because you had this perspective of a further off view. You could see where the world was going. And I think, the whole Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours, as much as they may take it back and say, say it's not always accurate and this was kind of made up or whatever, and it was just a theory. At the end of the day, it's true. Like, you spent 2,000 hours becoming an amazing guitar player. Well, now think of it if you spent 6,000 hours or 10,000 or a million. How much better you become each time, and you start to find things you didn't even know you could do. So if I go back even to when I'm challenging myself, I hit a million roadblocks. I had a lot of projects that didn't successfully go through. I had projects that I went in and pitched to a company, built it, and was like, this thing's amazing, you guys got to try it, working with them. And then they cut us off. They said, no, we're done, we're not doing this anymore. Project we did with LinkedIn. And a year later or 6 months later, they integrated a product that was identical. They literally took the entire product and launched with it, and you're sitting there going, what? What just happened? And at the end of the day, you thought you had built this really cool, successful thing. And in the meantime, they were doing the same thing on the side of it. And literally, you just spent a year and a half of R&D and tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars on something that just totally got wiped out in 5 seconds. So you're going to run into disappointment everywhere. And to me, it's how much you either switch the road and change and move on, or it's how hard you're willing to push to get the answer and result you're looking for. And that is the hardest part of anything in a journey, is that you're going to hit a roadblock further along in your build or your time or where you're going. This is in life in general. And it's the one that goes that extra inch or that extra mile that may find the next path or the next journey outside of it. And then there's everyone else that will stop there and take a pivot, maybe slow down, take the beat, and not figure out how to go forward and go get a regular job or go get back and do something because they hit a roadblock and they don't know where that next line is, and they haven't figured out how to get over that wall. That wall grew a little bit more. There was more resistance, and they couldn't figure out how to get over it. And so not every day, and trust me, you're your own worst critic. You'll hit your own roadblocks, and I've hit many of them all the time, because I hit them because of people not buying into what you're trying to sell or buying into the direction you're going or how you see the world or how you're doing something. So you will hit, I've hit millions of them. I've had spent millions failing everywhere. You think you're doing a great job, you're spending and you're failing. And then you think that failure is great, it's a great pivot. No, like, you didn't get anywhere. You spun your wheels and ended up nothing 3 years later. So you go to the next thing and do the same thing. So you're going to go through loops and you're going to try to get out of them. And hopefully you got people around you that may help or may not help, but it's really up to you to figure that out. And sometimes it's writing it down. Sometimes, for me, I'll disappear for 3 days. I need an answer and I don't know where it is. And the only way to get it is I literally just go into hiding and I'm writing things down like crazy. I'm racking my brain. I'm like, where did I go wrong? Why did this not work? What am I hitting this wall? I can't get over this wall. And then you have to make a decision. Can I get over it? Did I find a solution, or do I have to cancel it and work on the next thing? Because I can't keep going the runway.
Yeah. How do you make that decision? How do you decide when to pursue, and how do you decide when to pivot?
I don't know if there's a right answer for those, and that's the tough part, because passion sometimes gets in the way where you just want to keep going. And I with founders, I'll give them kind of it could be a financial or a direction, or I need this many users, or I need this kind of outcome, and I'll share, like, put something on the wall that says that, look, I've got a runway for 8 months, but I need to make a decision on a direction I'm going by 5 months, so that if I have to make this hard decision, I can pivot out. And, I've got founders down to the 5 months and they're like, look, I got 3 months of runway, but I'm not giving up. I know this is going somewhere. And I'll be like, perfect. That's your go signed. Then you won't. And I'm pushing them. I think you need to stop this. You're not getting anywhere. You haven't hit any of your numbers. You're running out of money in 3 months. You can't find any of your other money because you haven't proved anything. What is your position? I'm in. No, I'm not stopping. And boom, they just find that it's that one little notch that they needed to make. And then all of a sudden, right down to the wire, almost out of money, and the gods in the world jump in, provide them with X, and now they've got a flourishing business that is operating huge because they just hit that switch. They just made that leap of faith, and the faith is what brought them in, whatever that faith is. They got over it. and they went through it. So sometimes there's some world helping and there's some God's help and there's some bit of everything, but it's the drive and understanding that that that's got to go somewhere and you keep going with it. And other times you just say, you know what, I can't see this going any further than where I'm at. I can't, and I can't just keep fighting this. I have to make the change.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
it's like, I wish there was a linear line here, like this is where
I
it
think
is, and
everyone would just be having a great time if that was the case, right? It's
exactly.
because, I mean, that's the challenge that we all go through as well, right? Is how much are you willing to put into this? How much are you willing to risk? What are you willing to put up with? What are you willing to sacrifice in order to move through those challenging moments? And each of those examples that you just gave there of, okay, this is happening, I'm still going forward. I would almost guarantee that decision of I'm going to find a way, that's going to result in somebody looking at things differently. Okay, if I've only got this to go, I've got to find a way. Then there are going to be new options, new ways, new questions, new answers that are going to result as a result of that new level of commitment. Because just that alone as well, of you saying, all right, I think it's time to be out because you haven't hit your numbers, that's going to separate someone from going, yeah, you know what, you're probably right. And someone who's really ready to prove you wrong in that way, or prove themselves right, is going to dig their heels in and put the time and effort in that's required to actually make something extraordinary happen, right? One thing that I heard earlier is about 5-10 minutes ago, I think it was, you said the words building forward. Is that something that you think about often? And is that something that, do you see yourself building forward even when there's a roadblock or a setback?
There's a lot of elements that tie into how you're operating when you're in operations mode. You're driven to get from A to B. I have to get to B because when I get there, then I can start on C and D. I can start that forward positioning, but I have to get to B. And B is going to take me this amount of time, effort, and work effort, and drive, etc. And drive plays a big one in this. I have to be able to get up every single day fired up, because if I'm not getting up every day fired up about what I'm doing, why am I doing it? So that's passion. That's all of those emotions, if you will. If you were talking earlier about, do we have emotion in this? That's your emotion, if you will. It's the what gets you up in the morning, what makes you want to do this and not go to bed. People will tell you, oh, you're crazy, all you do is work. I am so dedicated to figuring this out or getting to this stage because this is what I'm made to do, or whatever it is. You start to push forward. So I think you always are building forward. You're always trying to figure out how to get there. And then I think in this build forward side of things, I think there's something that really speaks volume to certain entrepreneurs that think outside the box and break things. I'm always wanting to break things, figure out how to break it. Just because someone built it doesn't mean that's how it's supposed to be done. So let's break this. And when we break it, we're going to find a solution. That also goes to people. We'll break ourselves. We got to break ourselves out of our own pattern. So when you got to that point where you're like, I don't know if I should go forward, you haven't broke yourself yet. You need to keep going, because that line that we're saying that we don't know where it is, that line is at the breaking point. And you said it earlier. I've thrown all this money and I've done all these things to get there. I've got nothing left to give. That's your break point. When you hit that break point, you will then leap forward, because you're going to solve the problem, because you're at the ends of the earth. You got nothing left. There is an inventor called, his name is Yoshiro Nakamatsu. And this guy has like 9,000 patents or something, or 900,000 patents. I got to check out with the numbers, but he literally, I've been enthralled with this guy for decades, because he just figured out how to solve everything, and he just made a patent for it. So he just kept doing these things as he would build. But there was one thing that he did that made him come up with ideas. He would swim underwater, and he would go to the breaking point of almost drowning, and that's where he'd come up with his idea. His mind would get to this breaking point. It's either oxygen or this damn good idea. And there's multiple times where he wasn't coming back up and was having a tough time getting to the surface, but he came up with that new idea, and then he'd write it down, and he would go in, file patents, or create the product. But it was the breaking point was him getting to that suffocation, if you will. So his breaking point was that. That's how he found it. Our breaking point can be money. It can be business act. It could be anything in those realms. We just have to hit our breaking point, because that's where the ideas come through. That's your moving over the line. And in his case, he actually came up with the underwater writing pad because he got tired of having to come up above water to write his idea down because he'd
So
forget
good.
half of it. Yeah, so he invented it. So it's kind of cool. Like each thing was a layer, right? So I think if you're working forward, the thing that I was getting to about the entrepreneur side is that what is really cool about building forward is the entrepreneurs that actually have a way to help you while helping themselves push forward. I think there's a lot to say for me coming to you and saying, "Hey, how can I work with you? What can we do? All this stuff. Hey, I need this. Can you do this? Can you invest in me?" And it's the reverse is that, I always have an ask, but today I want to help you. What can I do to help you? And I think that's where paying it forward, pushing forward, it's not, you got to get outside of this realm that it's about me and I got to solve my problems. I also need to help others along the way. And I think that I also learned that as well, that if I can help others while I'm on this journey and get someone else one step forward or get over that little wall that they needed, then I think we all have done a good job on supporting the environment and the communities that we're in. But I'm always thinking forward. What can I do to get over this wall? What do I got to tackle? What thing do I not know? Who do I got to meet? What book do I got to read? What podcasts do I got to listen to? There's a million things, right? Oh, I want to do this thing. I got to figure out how aeronauticals work. I don't care. I'll learn it tomorrow. But everything is about what can I learn and then what can I do to push the envelope. And sometimes you got to carry other people with you. And I think that makes a big difference if you're trying to be a builder. You need to help others too, not just yourself.
Feels good as well to help others at the end of the day. I mean, we're human, we're here to go on this journey together. And so how did you originally delve into the world of angel investing and the business world that you're in? And like, was there a turning point? Was there a challenge that you went through? Like how did this even come to be?
I was working for myself for a few years, and I was working with startups since my Loblaws days. So now it's been like 25 years. I just always had this draw to founders and startups. So I was always rebuilding their models and then selling them through to executives and trying to get people to buy into their models. And I never even thought of asking for anything or getting paid of it. I didn't care. I was just so excited to be able to work on this new tech and be able to push them into a big organization and sell them through because I saw the vision and the direction. So because I was always part of that, I continued to work, and then I started investing in these companies. When I went out on my own, I had the ability to start investing, and I jumped on it right away. So started investing in companies, and it's hit and miss, of course, but you won't learn that hit and miss for 4 or 5 years until some companies start to fail and whatever else. But you don't notice that along the way. You're just excited, like, hey man, this is going to be the next $1 billion company. But you just keep working, helping, and doing your thing. And I was just doing that on my own on the side, and I obviously I knew about venture and I knew about angel investing because I had done other projects to pitch and talk into them, but I wasn't part of any community. I was always just a introverted solo filer and did my own thing. So I ended up, this is many years back, the city of Ajax was putting on an event and they asked me to come to the event, and I just kept delaying. So I was driving from downtown working, I think, and I just drove past where I was going. I kept going. It was like 45 minutes past the place or half hour, whatever it was. And because I couldn't convince myself to go in front of people and meet with the people. So I kept working through it, and eventually I just said, suck it up, go, what's there to lose? And, so I turned around, I got back. So I was an hour late to the event. And I got into the event, and they welcomed me in kind of thing. I sat down, and they were doing some talks. And I'm having this recollection moment here of the story, but basically the lady said, "Who likes change?" And everybody put their hands up. Everybody was all excited. I love change. I love change. And I kept listening to this talk, and everybody was like, how much they love change. And I just said, that's bullshit. I said, that's ridiculous. Nobody likes change. And the lady looked at me like in a keynote, and I'm like, sorry. I can only hold back so long before I say something. Normally I'd let it all go, but I was just like, no one loves change. This is all incorrect. And the lady looked at me. She's like, well, what do you mean? Why do you mean people I love change? I love this. And I said, look, did anybody drive to work differently today? Did anybody put their phone in the different purse or different pocket? Did anybody wear their watch on the other hand today? Like, these are things of change, and we're afraid of change. So everybody was like, oh. So they started to realize, wait, I don't like change. And then we started going to them like, the data doesn't make any sense on here. And I started analyzing their data, and they were like, what? I was like, no, the data doesn't work like this. So anyways, it ended up being like I was kind of killing the mood, I guess. And I didn't mean to do it. It's just maybe I was over analyzing, and then I got caught in the wave of trying to speak more truth, I guess, in the sense of how this all works, because I've read a lot and did a lot. Anyways, that caught the eye and attention of an investor in the room. And then that investor ran over and said, oh my God, and just started talking to me like crazy. And then, you invest, oh my God, you do this. Then you got to come to these events. And that kind of what was the starting point of me getting outside of my small box of how I was operating. And, in that same process, there was kind of a bigger instance that kind of kicked all of this off, which was more of the change point. And we talked about this a bit before, was I think it was a day or two before, which kind of, no, maybe it was a week before that, is that the same person that I had got invited to that event. I was driving home from meeting that person, and I ended up getting into a T-bone accident. And that kind of triggered this whole rethinking of, wait, I'm stuck in this wrong space and I don't know how to get out of it. And that's where I think that changed my mindset to these actions, and to go and push myself to show up at this other event that he invited me to. So I think in my mind was that you get stuck sometimes in a rut, and you don't realize you're in the wrong direction, and nobody else is saying anything that's helping you change that direction. And maybe this was a big punch that kind of helped redirect me and be more open-minded to this direction that I should be going in, which was the investing side. And maybe I wasn't, I was being offered other things, and I just was like, no, they see like scams. So I kind of never went to that direction. And this kind of just changed the perspective for being more open-minded to things. And then I showed up, and of course, everything from there turned into me joining these communities and being part of a larger organization of investing, and then building out our own platform to solve the problem of connecting founders and investors, and then creating a fund, and then going into continuing to angel invest, but then, kind of shifting back into running our own domain. But the great thing is that you learn so much from all those interactions, and then interviewing others that were investing. And then it's just kept building the knowledge and thinking, man, this was the best thing ever. I've learned so much in this last 20 years of working on my own with people and learning how they do things, and then trying to impose those slight little changes on myself to help me become better at what I do and move forward. So I think it was a win-win, so that T-boning
literal car crash, right? In order to
car crash help change things, right?
Yeah, our biggest breakthroughs come directly after our biggest breakdowns, and sometimes we're just not listening along the way to be able to see the signs that were always there, and these signposts that are there, and then it ends up being this massive proverbial slap across the face in order to actually snap you into gear again. One question here, and then I want to talk about your current role, or the role as CEO within a portfolio, one of your portfolio companies now as well, and some of the realities there. When this occurred, like that T-bone, that crash occurred, is there anything that you can remember that you said to yourself, or was there a moment that you can recall, or moments that you can recall that shifted that perspective? What shifted there that resulted in then the changes occurring?
It kind of falls back to the same thing when I was in the elevator, and that moment in the elevator changed how I approached solving problems with projects and people, and the little wall, making big walls into little walls. It was kind of the same idea. I think at the time, I was just doing too many things, and too many things were hitting walls, and I wasn't challenging myself to get over them because I was doing too many things. And I think that sometimes as entrepreneurs, we want to solve every problem in the world. And, the story or the analogy that I tend to share is that, when you go into a football stadium, there's 60,000, 100,000 seats, and there's 500 doors and whatever else. And entrepreneurs' brains look at this and think, Look at all of the freedom. Look at all the things I can do. I can sit in every one of these seats. I can go through all these doors. And then when you look at a business person and their brain, you got to go all the way through the stadium, to the back, through the door, through the one door, and you go to another door and this little office, and that's them. And they're crushing it in that little space. I think what entrepreneurs need to do and we need to do is that we need to hone our focus, and we need to really change our perspective. And the sign here is really indicative of that, is that sometimes we just need to slow down and take not just accountability of ourselves, but take measure of what we're doing. And we might realize that we've got 400 things on the go, and that 297 of them are failures, and 102 of them are just wasting time, but they're equally valued, but not doing anything. And that one thing is really successful that you're not seeing it. And I think that's where I think I was at a stage where just so many things were going wrong because I couldn't control so many things, which I felt I was. Thought I was in control. I was like on top of the world, closing deals, this and that, and realized they weren't closing. This just failed. This dropped. All of these things started to crash down, and everything did. And I realized that at that moment when I had to go back home with no car, and my father actually came to pick me up, and I started to think, well, one, I was concussed, so I won't lie, I had to work that through. But by the time I got home and started to hone in on it, it started to kind of clear up. It was like, all of these things don't matter. I have been doing so much and trying to do so many things, and maybe it was always trying to prove myself that I could do these things, and I didn't realize that the things that I was putting attention to maybe felt that they had value, but everything else that had value was getting no attention. And I was trying to do things I didn't need to do. And I think when they all started to crash, that became the crashing moment of it. And then I started to write everything down and say, look, I'm doing all of these things that aren't successful and they aren't valuable. And it's not burnout. It's just, it could be burnout. It could be just time waste. It could have just been overwrought with too many decisions to make in a day and too many things to go forward with. So I decided to start dropping things and started to clean the palette off and start saying, you know what, I'm not starting over. I can't do that, but I am going to clean things up. And then as I started to drop things and move things off my plate, not realizing again how stressed it was, you don't even realize stress anymore because you're just always in this 24-hour go, 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 is that as that started to drop and change, the opportunities of where that one thing is that was the best thing of everything I was doing started to float to the top, and more things started to fill in that bucket. So then you start to see that. And, I love the fact that you were saying that, sometimes we don't listen to the things around us. I will use this line over and over, is that we need to slow down and listen to the words that are being said around us, because we don't pay attention enough. And there's people telling us things and we don't think of them as anything. We need to read into them. Someone might say that don't eat the food. You go in and you find out 2 days later you have food poisoning, and you're like, why did I eat that? Someone did walk by me and told me not to go in here, and I didn't pay attention because I was so directed that I needed to be there, and they were right. I have food poisoning. I didn't listen because I just thought I knew better. And I think that's where I started to I think I needed to take that time, have that reset, and start paying attention to the smaller things and the details better, which was who I am, and keep using those being analytic and everything else and working the way, but refine my box down and get to that room at the end of the stadium, because when I'm in that room, I'm crushing it. When I'm in the stadium, I'm lost and I'm not doing anything. And I spent too many years trying to be in that stadium because there were so many shiny whistles and so much things going on that I wanted to be there and learn it. And my job was to be in that room. So now I just share to get there. And I try to help the teams where I am to focus on getting into that room all the time, because when you're in that room, you are going to crush it. And everything else is just shiny whistles or shiny colors, or whatever you call it, that are just bogging you down and causing you to blink out.
It sounds like the car crash was a forced slowing down that then led to some further clarity. I think this is really, really important to cover, because so many of us are moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour, And there are always more things that need to be done. And making time, because if you don't fill your calendar, somebody else will. Right. And so dedicating time in your calendar, because I heard you say this earlier, is that, all right, if you're experiencing a problem, then you're just going to go MIA for 3 days, for example, to figure that stuff out, right? And I think having certain times in our calendar, everyone's going to be different as to what they're wanting to experience with that. I know Brittany and I, my wife, we have what we call a seasonal getaway, where once a quarter we have a weekend where it's just us, nothing else around, no business, no nothing like that, and it's a beautiful time to reconnect. And there's a little bit of planning that I do on the front end, and it's beautiful in that way. And I could be definitely better at this one, but I love when I have and am free of technology, right? And whether it's a tech-free day or a tech-free half day or something like that, where we're actually giving ourselves the space to think, because, and you only have to think about just where some of our best ideas come from. It's when we're going for a walk. It's when we're in the shower, when we're in the toilet, when we're out doing something else where we're not at the computer usually, right? And having that time and space where, like, commit to doing that. And maybe that's a challenge for each of you listening, is commit to doing that where it doesn't require a literal car crash to occur, because at some stage, some kind of breakdown is going to happen if you don't do that, because you're going to find yourself getting off track, further off track until a point where there will be some kind of massive slap across the face that will occur. And I've had this on multiple occasions. I think we all have at different times. And it's about how can we minimize the amount of massive turnarounds that we have to do, and have those small tweaks along the way and enable us to learn and grow without having to go through the turmoil as much, where possible. Where possible. Have you experienced turmoil this year with, you're now in one of your companies as CEO? What's that been like? And what's been the experience? How have you worked through some of the challenges that you're experiencing?
Sure. And I like that when you're looking at, nobody wants a slap in the face, but I think it is a turning point. And sometimes you can't just create your own turning points, because you need some sort of adversity to create the turning point. And there is a point where you'll either lose a lot and make a turn, or because you're at a desperation point, or you'll sell your company because you're at desperation, or you'll quit and walk away from all of it. Choose your own ending story is kind of how I look at life. So it's a book that you choose every direction you're going to go to get to the end. And I think our fear and all of this that we've been talking about is overcoming your fear to challenge yourself to be a better person, to be driven, to get to where you want to go and figure out where that is. And if we all have a destiny and we all have a book that gets us there, it's really choosing those directions. So eventually you're going to get there. We're all going to get to 90, or we're all going to get to 50, whatever the number is, we're all going to get there. It's a matter of how we get there. Am I going to get there as I am, or am I going to get there playing guitar better? Am I going to get there playing this or doing these things? Those are the things you're going to build along that journey. And those are the different paths that will get you to that end point. But the point is, you're going to get there at somehow. And it could be bad paths that take you longer to get there. Some will be shorter paths, but you're going to get the learning you need to be where you're supposed to be at that time. You'll have a lot of aha moments. But those hard turns that are going to come, and you have to decide, am I going left or am I going right? I would prefer to go right, but sometimes you do make those left turns, and they're unfortunate because that learning is 10 times harder to get through. But when you do get there, the reward and all those benefits will be there because you're overcoming those adversities. And sometimes they are harder, and sometimes they're a car crash, but it smacks you out of that reality to make that right turn. Even coming back to jumping into the business that we did, we went through a lot of learning, like, I guess you could say, and they maybe didn't realize at the time they were going through the issues that they were, because they were going through, as I explained earlier, you don't even know. You've got the whole world in front of you. Things are crushing it, looking great. It's all shiny, lights everywhere. And there was a lot of underneath issues that were building up and not seeing them. And as those kind of started to filter to the top, And once we dove into them, realized that it was obviously extremely toxic, and things were falling apart, and they were slowly falling apart. So they weren't as noticeable. So coming in and being, part of a restructure, and then having to, battle through other challenges throughout the business. And restructures aren't easy no matter what, and not how you look at them. And then you have to build back in and build trust, and then build other people to come into the thing where they might be able to find out and read about what happened or why this. So you kind of have to really put a lot of emphasis on growth and opportunity, and find out where the gap is in the market really quickly, make that pivot, make that change. And I think the great thing is that in working with the founder, we were able to find a lot of those things early on. So going through those shifts and those pivots, we were able to move really quick in that sense. And then we basically got into a car accident. We can use that as the term, I
Yeah.
guess. And the car accident is what was the turning point, and that's where we made the right turn. We didn't go left and follow the toxic side. We didn't get swallowed up in that, because if we would have, it would have 100% failed, hands down. And because we made that right turn at the crash site, that right turn was still bumpy. It wasn't an easy turn, and all of a sudden, here it is, there's the win. We went down and we were 4 people, 3 people in an office, the size of a football stadium. And you feel like, what am I doing in here? This is a tough pill to swallow. And I'm sure not for myself, but for the 3, 4 of us that were in here. And I think that just gave us clarity and openness that we're going to be in a battle right now, and we're in a fight to survive. And it's the hard things of any business or anything you're going to do in life, is that the challenge is in front of you, and can you minimize the walls, and can you keep fighting another day? And first it was we've got runway we had no runway, we were negative runway. Then it was, can we make it to 1 month? Can we make it to 3 months? Can we make it to 6 months? And every time it was, how do we keep pushing the envelope? And then we got to a point where you decide, can we bring on people that can support the direction we're now going? And all of these things are challenges. Nothing is going to be easy tomorrow than it was today. And it doesn't mean that today's better than tomorrow. No, we all create our own challenges, because now we have a different direction. We want to go after X, and to go after X, you need to bring in Y, and you need to solve a new problem, and you need to manage through new problems. And you're going to face other problems that are going to hit you, because your success is somebody else's reason to try and, chop you down. So you're always having to pay attention to more outside pieces. But the more you focus and narrow the view of where you're going, the least problems you're going to have outside of your control. Because as you start to kind of take this broad view and narrow and focus in, as our business has now, we know exactly what we're doing. We know exactly what we're solving and where we're going. There's nothing else. We defined it down to a T and said, this is what we're going to go and do. And then everybody else can align to that, and it took me a long time as a young person to understand what it was meant when, someone said, be the best at one thing. You're like, I want to be the best at everything. So I'm a generalist. I learn about everything. I want to know about everything. I tell you how a plane works, tell you how an engine works. I've broken down engines. I've rebuilt engines. I could go all the way to anything and everything. Why? Because I don't let anything stop me from learning and going forward. But when it comes to business, the learning is slightly different. I can learn as much as I want on my own time, but in this time, I have to continue to help everybody and myself, everybody stay narrow focused to go to this end goal. And the only way to get there is to drop the things that are going to be nice and shiny, that look like they're going to bring money, or they're going to generate revenue or profit. But nope. So now you're like a tackling team. You're maneuvering all the way through to get to that end point. And it's hard for everybody to gather, because as entrepreneurs, we want to do everything. We see that there's opportunity here, but it's like having 6 products. Like, you have 6 candy bars, and they're all different. But to sell those 6 candy bars, you need marketing for each one of them. But your company only has a small budget. So then you're going to just market to one of them and hope they eat the other ones, or they pick up the other ones. So, and then you got to look at the manufacturing. Well, the manufacturing of those 6 bars, it's different for each one. That means you're going to have to buy other products, which means it costs you more money. And then you have packaging that's different. And then you have distribution that's different. So all of these things we don't think about, because we just want to sell 6 bars because I need 6 bars. But the company that was successful made 1 bar, sold 1 bar. And they crushed it. Why? Because that bar was the best damn bar you could buy, and everybody wanted it. And eventually, 20 years later, they made a second bar. And then that bar took off. Why? Because the brand was there, the value was there, they managed the cost, they were able to just crush that bar. Focus. High level of focus, narrowed down everything, no bumpers in the way, just in the middle. So you have to keep slimming yourself down. And that's kind of where we felt ourselves going, is that we kind of wanted to do other things because we could see the opportunity, but we got to keep narrowing our focus to make sure that we're being the best at one thing. Anything related to GPUs, that's us. We can GPU everything. So we want to be a AI architect for GPUs, done. And that's what we put our core focus on. And that's where we're getting market fit. That's where we're getting interest. And we just keep narrowing it down. And I guess I'm always throwing a lesson or a story into everything because I think we all have a lot to learn. We all can learn. I'm learning as I go, like I'm learning to be back in an office after 20 years. So to me, all of this is amazing people here. It's been very enlightening. I love it because every day I get to work with super smart people. And that to me is worth everything. So to me, it's you have to find your wins, and these are the wins. And it's the good people, it's the smart people, it's the drive that people have. And really, at the end of the day, you're just sitting in here maneuvering and helping everybody else maneuver to a common goal and making sure we all have a common goal. And that's where it seems to be working well, and we're pretty happy with it. So
Let's distill down then, because there's been some beautiful nuggets of gold and wisdom here in the conversation here. Let's distill it down into a few key bullet points that for someone solving a problem, what does it take?
Step by step on how to solve a problem. All right, first, pick your endpoint. Where are you going to? What is the problem you're trying to solve? And is it big enough that other people are having the same problem? You need to figure out if this is just your problem, or this is a global, or this is just a cultural in Toronto thing, or this is a Canada, or this is a global problem that everybody's facing. So you got to figure out the extent of where this problem sits, which means you got to ask questions, you got to talk to people, and you got to figure it out. If you see there is something, the second thing is you got to get into understanding what the positioning of it is. What am I going to do with this? Like, can I build the product? Can I do it cheap? Can I test it? Can I build a prototype and get to market and just play around and see where it fits? Am I willing to risk something to get this going? So build your endpoint. Then what's your first step? So your endpoint is, I think there's something here. I did some work. There's a problem. Other people are posting this everywhere. There's an issue. No one's know how to solve it. Perfect. Here's the problem. Got it. Now let's define the problem. What do I need to get to in order to make this work? Well, I'm going to give myself 3 months. In 3 months, I need to be able to hit what? What am I going to be done in 3 months? Okay, I'm going to have a prototype. Perfect. 3 months prototype. Now let's start back at it. I got to take my first step. What's my first step? I don't know how to build a prototype. All right, well, now you're going to have to figure out what that is. So there's always going to be a question, right? What? And then you have to figure out what the prototype is. So now that prototype just became a little bit tougher. Well, it's going to cost me $30,000 to build a prototype. Can I do that? All right, how can I do this on pen and paper or an Excel sheet? Or can I do this another way? So everything is chopping this thing down into little bits and pieces until you get to a point that it's so malleable that you can actually go and take the effort to do this problem and solve it. And sometimes you might try to solve a problem that's just way too big, and you might have to raise funds. I'm kind of against it at the beginning because I think the risk should be on the person that wants to solve the problem, because then you have a real reason to get behind it. If you try to put it on everybody else giving you money, you're going to waste all your time trying to sell people on the idea. When if you're in your mind and you know that there's something there, then you just have to keep beating it up. Keep trying to find the no that says you shouldn't be doing this. And if you can't find the no, you shouldn't do this, then that means you're in a yes. And that yes means I need to figure out how to get this thing going and move it forward. So go for no's and then just keep working your way forward. So endpoint, figure out what it is, work your way back. Make your first step. Your first step could be either I'm prototyping, I'm finding, putting some money into this, or I'm allocating a way to make the change. But you have to make a first step into proving that this is something there for you to go after.
Yeah. And then what about let's progress? I know we spoke a bit about that. Where does that fit into here?
Well, your progress, again, this is a tough one because everybody has a different idea on what they think progress means to them or what success means to them. So if your 3 months is your target that you're going to get a prototype and maybe it takes you 5, well, what is your win in between that? There's little wins you're going to gain, and that's going to build your momentum and your excitement. If you're open-ended. You'll tell everybody. If you're secretive, you'll hide it off until you get to the point where it's willing to share or you're ready to share it. Have those points in there where you know that someone's going to appreciate your work, and that when you show them the skill and the value that you bring, that you're going to get a push from that. That's going to give you the endorphins you need to move forward, or maybe it's your first sale, but figure out what that looks like. What's the reward? Where is the reward?
Yeah.
What could be a reward to you? And I think if you start to list out the potential rewards, like at one point I said, I need to raise $1 million for a fund. I wrote the thing on the wall, $1 million. And then I would put minus 100K. So now I got 900,000. So the whole thing was that I got to get to that thing. And if I can't get to that thing within a certain amount of time, then this goal isn't achievable, and I don't have the network, or I don't have the ability to do it. And I got to resurface my direction. And that's all of these have little different ways, but you have to challenge yourself and find what it was. Like as another example, when I said, I got to meet investors, how am I going to get an investor to trust me? And everybody's like, well, you have to tell them about yourself. You have to tell them about all your successes and all your investments. I'm like, I don't like sharing. So I don't want to tell anybody what about me. It's not about me. I like to ask questions, not give answers. Or I ask questions and I don't like to answer. So that's how my mindset was. So I'm like, well, how do you challenge that? And I beat my brain for days. Oh, I need to figure out how to get in the pocket of investors. I don't even know how to talk to them. Podcast. I thought, wow, if I could actually talk to them, I can learn how to ask questions, more questions to an investor. I can feel that we're equals. I can ask questions, share what I've done, what we do. Oh my God, this is great. So I went to the people I knew and I said, hey, I'm going to start a podcast interviewing investors. Can you join? Yeah, sure. I'd love to. I never interviewed someone in my life. So I was like, wrote it all down, and I had like 40 questions, and I was like a T, just tick, 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 tick. It was probably like super robotic and boring as shit. But I was so scared that I had to ask these people questions and learn. I have no personality. I'm like a robot, blah, blah, blah. So then that was my way in. But people trusted that I would ask the right questions. And then over 100 of them, I got more comfortable. And I changed the questions up. And then the next 20, 30, I got a little bit more comfortable. But it's the challenge that you're set in the mindset is that if I'm going to do this, this is the benefit to accomplishing this goal.
Those steps that you shared, for those, if you're running a company, there's great steps to take. But if you're not, these are still the same steps that you take, right? These, I mean, as you were sharing these, I'm like, oh yeah, this is what you did to put the dresser in the closet. This is what you did to go and sell those things. This is what you did to do. It's the same thing, right? It's just a different scenario. And so whether it's in business, whether it's in your relationship, whether it's in your life, your health, whatever the challenge is, whatever the problem is that you're aiming to solve, the pieces around it might change a little, but the structure of it is still absolutely there. You're solving a problem. Right. It's a really, really good conversation around how to solve problems, because again, as I said at the start, one of the most important things to really have clarity on how to go about going through and not allowing fear and limits potentially get in the way. So let's go through rapid fire segment here, your edge. It's these 3 key pieces, building blocks of success, of your values, your beliefs, and your habits. What's your number one value and why?
Curiosity. I want to learn everything. I want to know more about you than you know about you. I want to know about why you're so good at X. I want to know why you're the best piano player. I want to know how you got into piano playing. I want to understand everything. I just love to learn. So to me, curiosity is what, it creates future stress, because the more you know, I think it also kind of stresses you out knowing too much on things. But who cares? Like, I think to me, it's curiosity. It's ask the questions. There's this study they did a long time ago. They said, well, as kids grow, their focus is you need to be a marketer. So you just forget all of these other skills in life to become a marketer. And then you become this marketer. And then when you stop asking questions. So they said by the time you get to grade 8, grade 9, you've reduced your question asking down by like 95%. And the last 5% depletes over your university, college, and whatever till you get to employment. Mine increased. I just kept asking questions, because in my head, I was like, I need to solve this. I need to understand why these things occurred. And I believe you should never stop asking questions. Know how stupid they are, smart they are, whatever. No questions dumb. They say that a million times. Just ask questions. Stay curious. Keep driving. Keep pushing people to give you information, because the more you know, the better off you'll be, because then you can make judgment calls. You can make action calls. You can do everything you need to do with more information. The more data, more value you have, the more things you can do faster.
Yeah, that final part there. So the reason why is to be able to do things faster, more effectively, right? Yeah, yeah, love it.
Hey,
Core,
ChatGPT is as quick as it is because ChatGPT has access to 8 million billion quadrillion data points. Well,
yeah,
it only got those because it learned to learn them. So your job is to learn those data points. Your brain will retrieve it all, and your brain will use it, and it will store it. We all have the capacity. We just don't believe we can. You can. You can store everything.
the second question then around core beliefs, is that a core belief of yours? Or what is the core belief around that? Or is there a different core belief that's really shaped who you've become?
It's I don't know if there is like a specific core belief, but believe in yourself, build possibilities. If you're minimizing the size of that wall, you're building possibilities. If you're analyzing how something works and trying to find a better way to make it work more effective, efficiently, and benefit the world and help people, be humble, be driven, be direct. Speak your mind when you need to. I guess you could go through all the analogies, but I think you just have to believe in yourself. I think that's the hard one for people to do, is that they don't think they're smart enough or fast enough. And I go through them every day. I don't think the same, but I just pick and choose my moments. And sometimes my moments tend to be mostly around, I can't handle these comments that aren't real. And then I will let it out. But it's good or bad. It puts you in a situation. But I think being direct is good, and I think sometimes it's hard to hear what you don't want to hear. But I think people have to accept those things too, and being humble about it, or being able to work through with problems with people, I think is helpful. So carry people along with you, but yeah, be know that there's possibilities and you can work through them all.
Yeah, the things around around the believing in yourself that you just shared, I think is really important there. And if you're listening to this and it is a struggle to believe in yourself, and only you're going to know this. You could be look on paper as uber successful, and I've had this with so many of my private clients now, where there is a deep feeling of inadequacy, right? And only you're going to know this, listening in, that true believing in self that is not there, because you should experience some form of imposter syndrome at some stage, because it just means you're growing, right? It just means you're exceeding the level you believe you're currently worthy of. With the believing in self, though, if there is a struggle around that regularly, simply asking the question, what if I could? And this way, that comes back to your value of around curiosity, right? That's a pure curious question of, I don't know the answer, but what if I could? What if I could? Now, maybe you're going to be able to, maybe you're not. But at the very least, just open up to going, what if? Because the what if can start to open up and not have to say, oh, this limiting pattern of behavior is false. It might be true, but it might not be as well. Right. And so and playing around with that, I think that's the space of curiosity where you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to have all the shit figured out. And that releases a certain level of pressure, I feel, where if you just go, all right, you just believe in yourself. And if it's not quite there, you go, oh, what if I could do this? What might that look like? What might I try? What might I explore? What might I test out? And slowly but surely, you're going to discover more things about yourself that you're capable of, that you didn't think you were capable of before. And so it's a great belief to have, and it's a great belief to continue to nurture over the course of an entire lifetime. Because if you ever think I think you've arrived at that, you're just asking for trouble, right? Because there's always going to be another level to grow into. What about habits, rituals, routines? Is there anything specific that you can't live without?
I'm pretty adaptable to things, I guess. But yeah, you have a million, I guess, things that you prevent yourself from not doing whatever. I call life as bumpers, and
Yeah,
I just keep bumping into everything, and I
right.
want to bump into everything because it's contextual, right? It's like the more I bump into things, the more I'm learning about me, the more I'm learning about what I can do and not do, and what things I can force myself against. But I want the bumpers. I want to hit them all, because as I'm hitting them, that means I'm challenging myself, because someone's pushing back or something's pushing back. So it's like I don't know, those paddles when you play video games that you just bounce off in pinball. But I think, like, habit wise, I love that time. So walking, I walk a lot. I walk everywhere. So to me, it's if I could walk home every day, I would, but it might take could be a day or whatever. But the point is that it's a way to clear your head. But it's the people will say, oh, it's so hard, it does this, so it's, yeah, but maybe the first 50 times it was hard. Maybe first 50 times. Now you do it, you don't even know you're doing it. You're like, hey, I'm going to come pick you up. You're like, no, I already walked here. You walked here? That's 11 kilometers. I'm like, yeah, I'm already here, man. I walked. I knew that today I was going to walk there. What's 11 kilometers? I'm here. And you don't even think of it. It just becomes
Yeah.
innate in your abilities. And you're like, well, I don't need to go to the gym today. I walked 11 kilometers. Oh, I don't need to do this. I went 20. So like, I think in everything we do, if there's habits, I could list a million of them, because
Yeah.
everything is structured in a way that keeps your brain going in the direction you want, which is forward, because you're going to have pitfalls. You're going to have fires. It's how fast you can slow yourself down to take everything in and make that next step. And that's what's going to stop you from getting hit by a car, or stop from making the wrong decision. You know, you got to slow down before you can speed up. And I think you said it earlier, everybody's running at a high pace and moving fast. I bet you will figure out more things, solve more problems, and fix more of the things that are going on that you don't like in life or business by just slowing down.
When you walk, do you have any kind of devices with you, or do you put them away? Is it different at different times? Like, how do you go about using that time? Is that time for you to slow down? Maybe take us through that, because I'm a massive believer in walking as well. I come up with so many ideas when I'm just walking along.
Most of my ideas come through running, because I'm a runner, but I also, at least every day, I do 10 kilometers. So my average is like 11 kilometers a day for the last 10 years. So, because that's when I was able to start tracking it. So why is that important to me? It's the fact that now it's just part of me. So it averages. Some days it won't be that, some days it will be none, or whatever, but you average out, and it's just, you're moving through life. And to me, I want to stop, smell the roses, and listen and walk around. So sometimes you have tech with you. Sometimes you're just walking. You're not even paying attention. Other times I'm listening to a podcast or an audiobook, because that takes me out of my head. And most of the time it's because I want out of my head. I overthink everything. So to me, if I'm analyzing a million things at once, that's my time to breathe and not analyze things, because I'm just listening to a podcast. And yeah, sure, maybe the podcasts are always problem solving and how a detective did this or whatever, but you'll find your space and your time and what works best for you, right? And I think that moment of time, that if you can get a half hour and walk 5K around the block or whatever it is, I think that's a precious 30 minutes that you're going to get. And yeah, sure, you take a phone call, great. But most of the time it's just walking, and it's just taking it all in and thinking. And then you go back and you have fresh ideas. You know, it's like I'm playing a video game, and I'm playing away, and then I die, and then I die, and I die. And I'm like, oh my effing, I'm going to die. Do I just keep dying and keep playing? No, I put the joystick down and I go, and I come back half hour, 2 hours later, and I do it in one shot.
Yeah.
And you're like, how did I do that? Because your brain was overstressed about something that you couldn't solve, and you couldn't see your way through it. So take the time, slow down, stop, and go do something else, make lunch. And I bet you when you come back, you'll do it in 5 seconds, because you were able to decompress and think about it. Slow down.
Yeah. Really good. Really good. Hey, where can people find out more about the work that you're doing?
Well, if you're into deep tech and GPUs, you can go to arccompute.io. If you're into early stage companies, we have a few brands, but I would go to hardbootinc.com. That way you can check out what's going on in the startup world. And yeah, that's probably the easiest way. Find me on LinkedIn. Happy to somehow connect and chat along the way. So we're very friendly folks. So we enjoy the conversation and meeting good people. So
yeah,
yes,
so good, man. Hey, it's been a great conversation today. Thanks for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
No, I love it, man. It's I will say this is probably the longest show that I've talked on that I've had to put myself answering questions. So I'm going to say thank you for allowing me to be open and vulnerable. It's a different side. And, you know, I guess every day we progress forward and want to be a little bit more open. So thank you for allowing me to share, man. It's good. I appreciate it.
You're
absolutely,
absolutely welcome. And it's been like I said, love the different stories and again, some really great insights in there around problem solving and the lessons that you've learned along the way. So that's been fantastic. And yeah, for those of you listening into this right now, we'll link to everything that was mentioned in the show notes, mention how you can touch base and connect with JP at CameronAtlas.com/podcast. We've got some great new guests coming up, so make sure you hit that follow button, leave a comment, and until next time, go write the next line in your story. It could be a giant leap, but it could be also a moment of clarity, a bold decision, or a daily act of discipline that takes you beyond what's comfortable. That's how we unlock your edge. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time here on The Edge of Possible.